Well, welcome to our June edition of our Kentucky K-12 EdTech Leaders and CIO webcast. David Couch here from a undisclosed location, um, broadcasting here this morning. Our agenda is not long, and our timing will not be as long as usual. But we did want to cover a couple items. We know a lot of folks are on vacation, or this is probably the lowest attended month that we have annually, but we still wanted to share some information for those that were interested in keeping up with what's going on. So we do have Go Soapbox open. We don't have any questions today like we normally do, but just anything that bubbles to the top. Chuck, you said you're watching that for me? Thank you. So the first item up is we have been working on the 2025 to 2030 KETS Master Plan for Education Technology. It's our intention, we're all appears to be very solid, be able to present at the August Kentucky Board of Education meeting, which we intend to do. And because it's an administrative regulation by reference, after that it goes to a variety of steps afterward in the legal process and legislative process. So it's in place by next July. So that's why we're starting it so early, because it takes up to a year, but 9 months, even 6 months to get it through all the wickets. But this is one of the very first ones. We'll also be presenting to the local superintendent's advisory council before the board meeting as well. So Mike, I know all of us have been working on to ask you to give an update to our master plan.
Yeah, I'll speak to a few things and other folks can jump in. Obviously, well, I don't know if it's obvious or not, but hopefully people recall us speaking to the fact that we were intending and have worked to keep this as a what I'll refer to as a minor revision to the master plan, because the last version of the master plan we spent a great deal amount of time on and did make significant changes to the structure, the layout, the format of the master plan. And this one was really just an update to different items, and we've really tried to hold true to that. So and again, I'll ask for other folks to jump in with some specific things they want to point out. But a couple of significant areas and areas that I spent more time on than some of the other areas was the budget. We did completely walk through the budget, review the way we were calculating projections for the master plan budget. So there certainly is some changes in there. We combined a few line items together. An easy one to use as an example is the networking components and the networking wiring runs. We combined those into one line item. So it still represents projected cost for those two different two different categories of things that go into networking as far as calculating projected cost. But we see such a combination of the way expenditures occur around providing networking access that it was best to combine those two items. Just again, a simple example of something that we combine, and the opportunity will be presented as we get a little closer to finalizing the way everything looks, to where we'll share more details about some of these things that we're mentioning today. I'll just give you a kind of a projection of where we're at, and it's right now, and it's not final, but last year we had an annual cost of $366 million projected cost in the master plan budget, or in the last version of the master plan, I should say, not last year, but the last version of the master plan. Whereas right now we're around $430 million as a projected cost that will be in the master plan budget. Again, not finalized, but it probably will land pretty close around that. So there's certainly some recognition of some additional cost that it takes to maintain the KETS environment, the technology-enabled environment for K through 12 in Kentucky. And again, more details will be made available to you all, and especially even in detailed discussions through your KEs, I think there'll be more information that can be provided and will be. The standards area was another area that we spent quite a bit of time looking at, very clearly defining technology and learning standards. We've got a clear distinction that we're wanting to emphasize between technology needs standards, architectural standards, and product standards. That none of that's a big change, but we're just really wanting to make sure that we're pretty clear on the differences that exist in those areas. And then the learning standards, I'll just reference the computer science standards. And I know Marty may jump in. I think Marty's on here, but if not, as far as that's an area that we also actually very clearly point out. I'm assuming, is Marty on here? Yes or no? I know he was on vacation. I can't remember if he joined or not. Or I don't know if Ben's on here, but I don't have the information to go into the details of some of the changes that were made in the areas of emphasis. So that's an area that there was some changes made in, and maybe one of the other members can jump in and make some and clarify some of the things that were done in that area. If not, again, we will be sharing in more detail at some of the changes that were made in the areas of emphasis as well. There was another gear added and some changes that were made in that section as well. I just don't have those readily available to speak
Mike,
to.
and I think in July, it's our intention to go through this in detail.
Yeah.
So this is at a high level.
Yeah.
This month, for a couple different reasons, since we're not finalized and we have such a few folks watching the month of July and June, so we're going to spend more time in July.
Yeah. So you're probably prompting me to about enough said. What I said right now. So again, on track. That's just some highlights of where we are. And again, as David said, and I did know that, I was trying not to get into the weeds too much there, but we will in July share more detail, and we'll even share some information outside of. I'm going to give as an example. We want to be pretty clear on how we calculate the master plan budget and the kind of information that we use. So in the master plan itself, it will speak to the kind of information we use to calculate the master plan budget. And keep in mind, and I just like to always remind folks, the master plan budget is a target. It sets a target for, and really an ideal scenario of meeting all of the different areas of funding and the needs to maintain a technology program, from the local classroom level to the state level. That should be applied toward operational budgets. We at the state do an operational budget every year. We use the master plan unmet need budget as a target and something that helps us drive that. And districts should do the same thing. And so I always like to remind folks that. But for the master plan budget, in the master plan itself, we will speak to the kind of information that's used to make the calculations and the process that we use. But even in a more detailed level, we intend to have a worksheet basically that can be shared. And again, not something we're going to put within the master plan itself, but we'll make it available. And I expect the KEs will likely have an opportunity to review that. I think, Chuck, you and I talked about that. The Ks would take an opportunity to make sure to review that more detailed information of how we calculate. It's such an important part of the master plan that we want to make sure, and it's just an opportune time to really remind folks. And we got a lot of different new folks and of how we calculate the master plan budget. So, anyway, probably enough said.
Yeah, and also our field staff will be. We talked about this with the districts going over, because it's important how you understand every line item is calculated. And we'll be going over with the district so they understand just not the master plan budget itself, but the empirical data that we've used from the technology activity report over the past 3 to 6 years to come up with these projections. And so it's important that you understand we're just not coming out of the, just out of the, just total guesses with this stuff. It's really based upon your buying patterns, and Kentucky really is the best position in the United States of the other 49 states to be able to do that, because there's no one that really has a good handle on all the sources of funds that are buying technology and what that technology is. And we've incorporated that into this master plan, and our CATS engineers will be going over that with you in smaller groups.
So, one item I do want to mention, and David, you hinted at it a while ago. I'm not sure if you if you said this before we started the meeting, the webcast, or after, but one item that we very much so, and it's a pretty significant change. Um, if you really get into the numbers behind it and so forth, is we've always calculated devices, workstation devices, computer devices on students, and we done a calculation based on students. We use student count and so forth, and then we had teachers and faculty. And so we are, and this applies to both the standards and the master plan. We are more clearly defining, and I'm just going to use the words, the consumer class devices and the enterprise class devices. And the ratios will change because we recognize that the end user, and I'm just going to call it a basic end user consumer class type device, is applicable to a larger number than beyond just the students in today's time than what we would have said previously in the past master plans. Because those devices, those end user devices, just use the Chromebook as an example, simple, easy example, is a much more acceptable, suitable device for a wide range of end users, including teachers to faculty at times, and that'll be a local choice of when you apply that type device toward a teacher or a faculty member, a staff member, versus again what we'll and traditionally a lot of times have referred to as an enterprise level device. And there certainly remains times when you want to use enterprise level devices, and because of the nature of the work of an individual, and even potentially for a group of students. But we are kind of more definitively characterizing the two different type devices that we have as the consumer level basic type device, and then the enterprise more high level business class type device. And there's different expectations that should exist between those two different types of devices. And we're recognizing, and I'll just say it, I think as clear as it needs to be said, that basic consumer level type device does not have a product standard associated to it, whereas the enterprise level, higher level in device, does have a product standard associated to it today. And again, we'll look at that as we go forward into the future. But anyway, that's an area that I think folks will need to be aware of and pay attention to.
Thanks, and I'll conclude with this: is we already spent a lot of time and energy on this in the 2018 to 2024 plan. We didn't do a massive overhaul of it. We mainly modernized it, and all through the past 6 years, we've been updating the studies in it, getting your all's input, and we've incorporated and even at the CIO summit and past CIO summits that we've had in Louisville, is we asked you for your input, for example, for the areas of emphasis and other parts of the master plan, and we've considered all that feedback that we have received. And so I appreciate those that provided it. And once again, we'll spend a lot more time on this, and maybe just about all the time on this in the July webcast, because then we'll be going to the board in the early August timeframe to present it. Next up is an update on our next generation Kentucky K-12 internet service. Mike, can you also, and anyone else that wants to jump in with that, Chuck? I know you're going to add some to that too.
Yeah, I'll speak to it, and then others can jump in. It's the overall status of our transition work is progressing as we really expect for and anticipate that it will. We remain confident in being able to meet a full transition by June of 2024. However, we do have contingency options and plans in place in the event that we do run over from that date a little bit. And that's always pretty much been the case, that we needed to have a contingency plan if we do run over past that date a little bit. It's not a catastrophic issue if that happens, but it does have costs associated to it. Is probably and I guess that can be related to catastrophic, but I don't think it'll reach the point of being that. But it could have that if we have to run over. But again, everybody remains confident that we're going to be able to meet that time frame. The contract is very much so in a stable position today, as far as the contract, the NGKI contract that we put in place with E&A, and that's a very positive thing. The contract again is in a stable state to carry us forward throughout the duration of its life, which is essentially up to a 10-year contract. And E&A is, reporting very positive activities as far as all of their equipment that they have to put in place is in process. There's a lot of back end stuff, behind the scenes stuff that has to be put in place, and again, that's all in motion. Their process of acquiring that information is all in place, or in motion, I should say. And they report that they feel confident that those things, because one of the concerns, just kind of speaking to it most clearly, is the ability and the availability of equipment is always a concern when you're implementing something new, and being able to order that, receive that, the shipping time of that, and so forth. In today's time, we all have been subjected to delays that come into play with that. But I think, again, everything seems to be pretty well on track as far as that equipment being in process, and the different things they have to do behind the scenes. So, we continue to work with the districts on preparation activities, and Chuck can jump in and speak to that a little bit more, but those things are going on. The KEs are obviously very involved in detailed discussions with each and every district in some form or another. There's little things that come up that are being addressed. We certainly don't need to go into some of those, but site preparation things that have to be addressed, and again, we'll handle those as they come about. Again, nothing that is red flags. We do have, and I did want to point out that we've got a certain number of districts that specifically have to take some action on their voice services that they have in place, and that they will continue to have in place. And they got some options potentially there, some choices. And I know that those discussions have been occurring, and awareness have been being made to those situations. And there could be other locally ran things that have to be addressed, because again, this is a different network. There's some changes, but ultimately we remain very confident that each and everything that a district does, whether it's under a state guided service, or whether it's under a locally guided service that may have some uniqueness to it, will be able to operate and perform, as it has previously under the new network, as we continue to implement it. So with that, I'll let Chuck jump in and say some things as needed here.
Thanks, Mike. So, specific for kind of a couple of milestones that we've got coming up here over the next several months. The first one I'll speak to, and all of this is being worked through between our Ketts Field staff and our internal OET project management team and the E&A project management team. Big shout out to Jennifer Devine, doing a great job on our side. But around the end of July, 1st of August is when I'll call it the make ready phase is getting ready to start. Okay. And all of this will be communicated with each of you individually as district leaders. And that is the process where the actual construction will begin to bring the fiber onto the property, across the property, and into the buildings. We actually have a status meeting later this afternoon, and we're going to start nailing down very specific dates and times of when that will start in each district, and the duration of that. So you'll know that, okay, on this date, you can expect a construction crew, and they're going to be there for 24 hours, a week, depending on the complexity of the install. We don't have that level of specificity yet. Hope to have that over the next few weeks, and all of that will be communicated with you guys. And then obviously what you're going to need to do on the backside of that as district leaders is make sure that building principals, maintenance directors, all the right people know that we're going to have those teams showing up to actually do the construction work. The next thing that we're working on, and some of you may have already been contacted, is we're working through building the actual turn-up schedule that will start first week of October. We've got some pilot sites we've identified. We're going to move at a pretty slow pace through the month of October, November, and December. And then we're going to kick it into high gear come January with a lot of room on the back end of that schedule. All right, in the event that we run into inclement weather or issues that we have to deal with. So, Mike, as we've talked about, all of that will be communicated with school districts through their CATS engineers. That's something that we're heads down in the planning, phase 4. So just keep your eyes and ears open for that information to come soon.
Good deal. Any of the other team members got a comment to make real quick? Phil, you got anything that you want to add?
No, not right now, Mike. Thanks.
Okay. All right, good deal. I think that covers where we're at on that, David.
Thanks. Bill, you informed me a couple of days ago of a recent nationwide cyber attack on both the private and public sector organizations. And Bob, this impacts cybersecurity. In Kentucky state government, we use it's used across state agencies is a product called Move It. And this was the one that was targeted by cyber criminals, really from foreign countries. And Phil, as we talked about yesterday during our OET team or leadership team meeting, it is concerning anytime you have a product that has been having issues 3 times within a very short period of time, even though the last one vulnerability is something that supposedly the company found themselves and trying to be proactive, where the first 2 were not. We don't know at this time of anything that has been exposed in Kentucky state government. We've had communications with the Commonwealth Office of Technology, who provides that service for all state agencies. But doesn't make, but we're always on high alert here because you never really know for sure. We did discuss yesterday about not something immediate, but longer term of moving to a different direction than Move It. Just not another file transfer program, but other things that help protect security better. I asked yesterday if there are school districts that use that product, and there are certain situations. I can't. What was the? Bob or Phil? Do you remember what is used there?
One of the instances is when districts submit migrant data to KDE.
Yeah.
And so that's one example. And then we also receive data from other state agencies using this tool as well. Okay. So, and because it is a secure file transfer application, kind of by definition, any information transmitted on it is going to be sensitive or confidential. So anything that gets sent is something you wouldn't want exposed.
Now, what are the types of things that we're looking? It's not when we're talking about this with DD yesterday, there are certain things that processes have been built in, because I know we have part of our OET staff that's watching this. So it's not anything immediate, but we're now looking at what is our longer term strategy, moving away from Move It and other kind of products like that to something that is just more like OneDrive. I think we were talking about yesterday, Bob, and go ahead and share some of those other ones that we're looking at.
Yeah, we have we have a lot of ways that are kind of inside the CATS arena, if you will, that we already pay for, that are good at sharing files securely. And when you look at file transfer, your goal is to send a file from one place to another, not to store it someplace. And because then it just becomes more vulnerable there. And so when we look at Google Drive and OneDrive and SharePoint, there are ways in which those applications can be configured by default, and they're made for this sort of thing, that would allow us to use our current CATS IDs and MFA and SSO and that sort of thing, and that would add a little bit of extra security in this whole process and kind of keep it in the family, if you will, versus going out. But as you mentioned, we've got a lot of automation already built into this one product because we've been using it for 10 years or more. And so it would be one of those things where it wouldn't just be a quick move. It would be something that would happen over time.
I think the other one is email. You can encrypt through email for certain files, correct?
There is, we can encrypt files and send via email as well, which is also, if you encrypt the file, it's very secure that way, because no matter who it goes to, if they don't have the password to get that file, then it's very secure. One of the benefits, though, of Move It and other file transfer applications is that you can send very, 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 very large files, whereas you couldn't do that via email. Email, you're limited to like 25 megabytes or so. Move It and SharePoint, you can send files that are gigabytes in size, which sometimes that is called for. And so that's one of those issues that we have to always kind of keep in mind there.
I think on this one, Bob, we get updates, we get news and information about different patches that need to be applied and leaks, or vulnerabilities that happen in lots of different pieces of software. The thing that was very concerning about this one is there were 3 since Memorial Day, so it's almost like they're leaking from every possible spot, So that was what was really concerning, that and we've been keeping really, really tight communications with COT, the people that host that service for us. So
that's right, Phil. And the very first attack that was identified, the attack started on Memorial Day last month, and they started with certain versions of the software. And COT was already past the version of the software that had that 0-day vulnerability in it, which made me feel really good because I was actually on vacation when that occurred myself. And that's one of the reasons that attackers hit on holidays and long weekends, because they expect that not very many people are minding the store. There's an opportunity there. We always preach quite a bit that you should always keep the latest version, and you should always keep your software patched. And that's something that COT also believes. And this is one of those occasions where it really has helped us out. We believe now nothing's 100%. Another vulnerability could be uncovered. As they have researched this one vulnerability, they found a couple of others that they didn't believe had been weaponized yet. But you can't tell sometimes. And so I think it's important for us to not jump out, of the frying pan into the fire, for example. And as I mentioned yesterday, even though there is a pattern of them having some vulnerabilities, they now have 3 less vulnerabilities than they did a month ago. And so they're kind of getting better. Whereas if we were to switch to another application suddenly, we're still in that phase where we just don't know. We're assuming that there's security. So it's all, trying to figure out what your risk appetite is, and, trusting that because COT has not seen some of the vulnerabilities in their instance, that we have a confidence that maybe, kind of stay the course for now. There are some specific IP addresses, and COT was not seeing any activity from those IP addresses. There are some specific files that end up on a compromised system that COT was not finding on their system. And so that gives me some sense of security, even though we do think, well, let's see what our backup needs to be here. We want to make sure we have a backup, we have a long-term plan to address this should we have to at some point in the near future, which I think is important for us to do.
It really speaks, Bob, to our priority that we put on patching devices and keeping those updated. We do that here in KDE very aggressively, and we do that for our schools too. We provide help in that. So it's really important to keep it updated. I always worry about I got a Windows laptop at home that I don't use that much. And so I always think about it every time I turn it on, I got to go through this whole patch thing, to get it kind of updated, because you don't want it to be on the internet unpatched. So, but it's a service that we do. It's part of the work that we do, and we do take that seriously. So
we do, and it's glad to see other agencies also taking it seriously.
Yeah, and we'll let you know if pretty quickly if we as soon as if it does happen,
if anything changes,
any exposure of any K-12 data. Just not by district, but by the exchanging between Katie and other state agencies that we have relationships with. But so far so good. But we want to make you aware of it.
Yeah, definitely.
And then just internally for our staff is, while we're not immediately moving off Move It, we're starting to take a look at strategies of actually moving off Move It. So and other products like that. just something that's more inherent to what we already use. Next topic, Mike, I don't know if we have any other updates to any of the RFPs and contracts.
Yeah, I can real quickly speak to the status on a couple other things. The connected user experience, obviously, we've been talking about that for a good while. That is now at what I will call the 1 yard line as far as the RFP process for that to get posted. So that we do anticipate that being posted very, very soon. Assuming none of the final steps there at the 1 yard line kind of delay it a little bit, but so that's something to watch for, to be aware of. Obviously, as we go through the process of awarding some contract out of that, we'll bring on a very another intensive body of work, which again is a whole discussion for a different time as far as the details we want to get into on that. The SEEK RFP is one that we had mentioned and had closed. And I don't recall if we had mentioned on a webcast that resulted in no award of a contract. So there was no award of a contract as a result of that process. There's multiple contributing factors of why that is. But what that means is that there will be a new set of steps that will be put in motion to address the SEEK system, which, again, reminder in a quick way, the SEEK is the system, or the group of systems that handle the funding to all school districts. So obviously there's a lot of things that go into that. That's a complex environment. And the objective is to put a modern solution in place that handles all that. And so again, that's still going to be the objective. And so a new set of steps being put in place. And I say that as vaguely as I am. That could be another RFP. It could be some other process that we utilize in the department to ensure that we have the contractual vehicles in place, again, to modernize the environment by which we do the SEEK system. So those are two I think I mainly want to point out, David, as far as the status on them.
Thanks. I'm going to talk about.
One more, and Dee Dee probably will jump in to say it. Now I can't
report card.
Yeah, school report card. The school report card that closed, and and actually, if Dee Dee's on here, she probably can give a better status of where that's at. It's closed, and I think still going through the evaluation process.
Right.
So that's probably enough said about it. But I wanted to mention that one as well. Sorry about that.
I want to bring up a report that our own Paul Shoemaker within the Office of Education Technology, who is a liaison with the Office of Assessment Accountability, and just for those that are watching, we try to have good relationships with all the different program areas within KD. For example, I meet usually bi-weekly with our CFO, Chief Academic Officer, and assessment accountability. I meet with Rhonda Sims very frequently. And it's important to have good relationship with these other offices, and we're moving together with technology-enabled implementations. And online testing is one of those. And we're very proud of the great success we've had. And this is just not KDE. This is the teammate with school districts of making this happen. So it's something that we have done in very large scale. And don't take it for granted, because there's states very close to us that have stumbled, bumbled, and fumbled on this quite a bit over the years and never had the success that we've had. So I very proud of what we've done. You can see the scale and magnitude of tests that were given. And then we had, we always identify where we had any kind of outages. But the nice part about that service is you're able to pick up where you were at before in your testing. There was a DDoS attack that we had, and we were able to deal with that, not let it be disruptive for that district. You can see the scale of tests that we've given this school year. It's 1.7 million. Once again, a very large scale with I would say close to 99, over 99% success rate, and giving that where there was no disruption for anyone. And you can kind of see the stats that Paul's put together for us. We can see over the course of time the peak of these tests given. So it has a lot to say about the stability of our Kentucky K-12 internet service, the DDoS service that we have in place, our partners that give the online testing, Pearson itself, and the school districts themselves, with having an environment to where this worked to great scale with great reliability. And we get a report from Paul just about every day, showing that the scale of systems that have been done, and you can see this one just climbing up toward the end as we were given those tests here. And he did a nice little chart for us here: the Kentucky summative test, the ACT, and the CTE testing that happened. So Kentucky summative test, 1.5 over 1.5 million of those given. You can see where we have the number of ACT tests that were given as well. It's a total of 1.7 million. This is an interesting chart that it kind of goes to Mike. If you take a look at the Kentucky summative assessment, if you take a look, we have about 527,000 student devices that were used for that test, if you add all those numbers together. So the Chrome operating system is about 90%. The Windows is about 5%. The tablet, iPad is about 3%. The Apple desktop or laptops is about 1%. And Linux, I'm not sure where Linux came in there, but you can see the scale. So it was important for us also when we're taking a look at the master plan. What are students doing, and what do we see the growth patterns? Definitely have seen the growth pattern toward the Chrome operating system. I suspect those numbers will get even higher as they have for the past 6 years, from a transition from those other environments to the Chrome OS for students. But that's a pretty healthy number of the tests that we're taking, like say 90%, 3% Windows desktops and laptops, the iPad 3%, and the Apple desktop or laptop is 1%. So that helps us in our at our calculations too, as we're coming up what we think the future is going to look like. And here's it's a big deal for those districts that were impacted from power or had any kind of interruption through it. But overall, I would give that a 5-star kind of experience for our districts for online testing, and something to be applauded, at least from the technology perspective. So let's talk about the next my next fun topic, leases over 100,000. Did want to bring up something about this. This goes back to our summary notes that we just sent out, which I encourage everyone to look at as a refresher. But I think even during our last webcast, we said, well, when does this stuff come out? And really, our webcast last month and most webcasts are, you can take that as what it is. And you can watch a copy of it and point people to it till we put the summary notes in writing. So what you see in this month's webcast is a summary. And we spent the last webcast with a lot of time and energy on the leases over $100,000 and the Office of Legal Services checklist. 99% of the time of these leases is from a legal point of view. Our technology portion usually just lasts 15 to 20 minutes. We usually approve it the day that we received it in 15 or 20 minutes. And really that is the extent of the OET portion of the approval process, the very first 15 or 20 minutes after we receive it. The rest of it is really from the Office of Legal Services. And so we're trying to get districts ready for that part. And as you say, is right now there's a checklist that's provided by the Office of Legal Services, but I can tell you there's an intention is to transition that from optional to required. And they're in the August Kentucky Board of Education meeting. It's my understanding that that regulation that expired will be come back, and it'll talk about that required form to be put in place by districts. You'll see no mention of the Office of Education Technology in that regulation, since from the technology perspective, it's such a small part. But I did want to spend some time on these two pieces here. Is if you want to check the status of a lease, we recommend you do one of two things. You check directly with your district's legal point of contact. That is the best person to find out what is the status of it approved. Not really, your CATS engineer is not involved with leases at all. It's zero. So going through the CATS engineer is not really going to give you a status of it. Office of Education Technology, given that ours is done in the first 15 or 20 minutes of approving lease, we're not going to be able to get status of it. It's really going to be in the Office of Legal and Legislative Services. You can send, so you can have your district point of contact try to find out and contact the Office of Legislative Legal Services. You can send your request to this leases over 100,000, the same one you submitted your lease to. I said this, you can send it to me, but you should not send it. It's like, can you, should you? If you send your, if you said what you send it to me, or the Office of OET Associate Commissioner position, because as I said, we always approve it within the first 20 minutes and on the same day. All I'm going to do, because that's a waste of time, is I'm going to have you look back at option 1 and option 2. If your district has some kind of legal related issue to the lease, your district's, you need to contact your district's legal rep needs to contact the Lindsay Swartz, who was on our last webcast in the Office of Legal Services. Just a reminder, I don't manage Lindsay. The Associate Commissioner in the Office of Legal Services is their manager. So that's the kind of chain of command for addressing one. I want to remind this because of you. This is the 3 most common mistakes that delay your lease being approved is not OET. OET is approved in the first 15 or 20 minutes. It comes down to the legal side. First is related to the indemnity clause within the lease, and I don't know a lot about that. You'll have to talk to your legal representative for that. The second and third is the district does not include all the documents that are referenced in your lease. So here's a mistake that I see happening. The district's technology staff is the one that is sending that lease forward, which I'm not sure why that is. It probably should be, if I had a recommendation for you, that should be your district's legal point of contact, because what's happening is the technology person is not looking at the details of that lease and all the addendums and the attachments and the schedules that are supposed to be part of it. So your legal staff member should be the one that is putting that package together and making sure it has every addendum, every schedule in it, and forwarding it, versus the technology person who it's real obvious they're not looking at the details of all the things that are referenced in the lease. Because I'm telling you, when Office of Legal Services gets it, not us, not OET, they're looking for everything referenced in that lease. And if it's not there, they'll say we can't evaluate it because it's not all there. So my first recommendation is whatever is being forwarded, your legal point of contact is the one that puts that package together and forwards it. It's not really the technology person. You can, but over and over again, the mistakes are made as the legal person within the district is not, or it looks like they haven't looked at it and haven't referenced it. The number 2 thing, a mistake, or I should say the 3 of the 3, is you're not putting your district's legal representation's name and contract information on the district's lease submission. Given 99% of the time and energy on leases is on the legal side, that's always a problem when you don't have the legal point of contact on there for the Office of Legal Services to contact you. We did spend some time last month. I took a look at this, and like 27% of you are do not submit leases, but 90% of you that do, if you take this 40, so 36 out of 40 is 90%, do have a legal representation. And so I strongly encourage you to use them to submit it, get it all ready for you to submit it if you don't want delays in the contract. And for 7%, this 10% that don't, and these are the ones that responded last month, is whoever is identified as the point of contact for your lease, that may be the superintendent, is they will have to be going back and forth and making sure all the legal aspects are there within the lease. But this is all the things we talked about last month. And just as a FYI, if those three things aren't in place, your district will get something that goes to their superintendent. Specifically, when you said all the documents are there and you're not pointing the legal point of contact, it will go directly to the superintendent saying those items are not there. Like I say, we spent an enormous amount of time on that topic last month and are hoping to not have to spend much time on it going forward. Next one is what I would call e-games, or it's sometimes called esports. I did have the good time meeting with the Eastern Kentucky group of technology coordinators that was in Dale Hollow last week. Last Friday, met with them. I know that they were there Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. One of the items I talked with them about was the e-games, in particular the Nintendo Switch. And so my intention is, and just so you know, I was at the state championship for esports a month ago. Maybe it's a month and a half ago. I actually gave out the awards for the trophies and stuff for that event. And I spoke with the esport coaches individually, particularly those that have the Nintendo Switch. For those that are involved with this, that have this, and it's a growing number of participation. Those that use Windows-based devices, and I'm not even sure if the Mac OS devices are used for the esports side, but we're not having a problem with those if they are used. But the Windows definitely is not having it. So if it's an esports game like League of Legends, it's not having any problem running over a cyber secure environment that we have in place with the Kentucky K-12 internet service. It's the other parts of the games, the Nintendo Switch in particular, that is having that. So my intention was to have call a meeting with the eSport coaches and the district CIOs that have Nintendo Switches as part of their repertoire, and us, the High School Athletic Association, to talk about this topic. In talking with those coaches that were there, they tell me that the hotspots for and this is Nintendo Switch, so Windows works. Those games work. Rocket League works fine. That's a Windows-based machine. We're talking about the two Nintendo games that are played. Talking with those coaches, it says like the wireless hotspots do not provide enough reliability or bandwidth for them to be played. So really, the students are playing beyond the school campus. And so, just as a reminder, there's really four aspects that come into play with e-games. Priority number one, and this goes back to the 90s, is to protect the prime time instructional and mission critical operations time. And that goes with esports, that goes with really anything that's not mission critical. Those are really to be played beyond the core instructional hours and the mission critical hours to do things that for the school district. The second one comes into play is cyber safety. And there's laws that were put in place in the late 90s that made sure students, as much as possible, and the adults of the district, were not going to sites they should not be going to from a school-provided internet service or school paid for and provided device. The third is cybersecurity. Obviously, we spent a good amount of time previously on cyber safety cybersecurity with Move It. With all these e-games, is we do not reduce the cybersecurity defense that we have in place. We also don't build unique defenses for just a specific game, because when you build it, you got to maintain it. And so it's got to be part, and it's got to work on the core environment without anything unique having to be built, maintained, or shut down. And as I mentioned before, the Windows-based games do that fine. And the other one that comes into place is E-Rate. E-Rate is very particular on the instructional service that the Kentucky K-12 internet service be used for during instructional prime time for instruction and basic operations. And so That's why we push back on video exchange of between coaches during core instructional hours and playing e-games and esports during that time. One of the items that I do want to talk, we'll do in a separate webcast just for this item for the coaches that are impacted, by the CIOs are impacted, and I talked with the erratic group of CIOs about it. Is one of the possible options is if the hotspots don't work, is what can a district do? Well, we spent extensive time in Lee County. John Proft, appreciate him, the sports coach that they have there, the games coach, about this topic. And we being KD, have not lowered the defense of our cybersecurity at all. We have not built anything. We're not maintaining anything. But within Lee County, the Nintendo Switch works. So what I told the 4 coaches that I talked with, and these were the 4 coaches that were part of the state championship that were there, because there's two sports that were played, and so you have a total of 4 teams and 4 coaches, is try to see if it works on your environment. Just go try it. We're not going to turn anything off, but it may work like it is in Lee County. And we've not figured out why and what A plus B plus C divided by D equals to make this work in Lee County. We've studied other districts and are trying to, figure it out. But we haven't figured it out. We spent extensive time. What is it a unique brand of the Nintendo Switch? Is it the ones that Play VS offers or doesn't offer that's working and not? We can't figure it out. So we just tell you, they can try it. We don't have a problem with them trying it over the environment. We just not going to reduce the defenses for it. The other option that I'd like to talk to you about that is possible, but it always will take folks through the 5 pieces. If you've not heard me speak about it, can you do something and should you do something? Just because you can technically do it doesn't mean you should. How much is it to do that option? Who pays for that? They usually has people looking around the room for someone else to pay. And do you have a legal purchasing mechanism? So can you, should you, how much, who pays, and what is the legal purchasing mechanism? So one of the options, possible options, is a can, and the district got to make the choice of should, because KD doesn't make that, the district does that, along with your esports coach. Is a possibility is that you can buy a field to play separately from the Kentucky K-12 internet service to play the Nintendo Switch game. You put in a separate line, a separate hub into a specific room, and that's a separate field to play. E-rate does not come into play because that's not your prime internet service. The cyber safety does come into play because if the school district buys any kind of internet service or any kind of device, you must meet the requirements of the law for cyber safety. And there's filtering requirements of sexually explicit information that's specifically required in the law to be addressed if you buy a separate line. This applied to hotspots as well. We found out a bit ago that the Nintendo Switch has the ability to have its browser turned off because it has something ability to browse internet, but you can, as an adult, turn that off for the school purchased devices. So really, this is a decision in the district. You get involved with the business of having a separate line. Now, we are working with ENA to see how possible it is that in this new environment that the Nintendo Switch will work in the new environment. I don't know what those probabilities are. I don't know if that's 5%, 10%, once again, because we don't know what A plus B plus C divided by D equals. But ideally, that's the approach that we would like, much like what's being played with League of Legends and Rocket League. Ideally, the Nintendo Switch would work, but there's even when I watched and I've gone to a couple of these state championships of the esports, and you can see the most trouble they have with stability of the environment at the University of Kentucky is the Nintendo Switch. Now, it's my understanding when they play at the state championship, they buy a completely separate line, so it is not they are not playing their esports game on the prime time internet service and services that the University of Kentucky is for all their students for all their academic related items. It's a completely separate building. If you've never seen it, it's just dedicated for esports on the campus. It's a pretty good distance from the campus, but it's walking distance. And it's got a completely separate internet service. So they don't have to worry that much about cyber security. impacting the core instructional environment and academic environment, administrative environment of the UK campus. They'd have to worry about all the devices that are within that facility that's playing those games to be worried about it. So that's the plus and minus that districts would have to take a look at. You put in a separate line, a separate field of play for this, and in the interim, you may need to take a look at that, because as we've talked about, not all districts are be done by the time that the next season plays in the fall. So it could be an interim step that you choose, or you wait to see if the NA option works. But I just want to let you know, is much like you have a football field and a soccer field and a basketball court and tennis courts, and e-games, the internet is their field of play. And I take a look at it as with the athletic budget, and ADs may feel separately, that athletic directors, that's a part of their budget they have to come up with. So as I said, is you're taking a look at a separate line. It is can you, should you, how much, and who pays for that separate line, and then what is the legal purchasing mechanism that you have in place there. So the intention is I was just going to immediately schedule a meeting with the eSport coaches, but I think before that one, I'm going to schedule a meeting just with the CIOs that are interested in this topic, because if you're not aware, this is a very vocal group of eSport coaches with the Nintendo Switches, and so I'll be taking a look at scheduling a time just with you all on what it takes to make the Nintendo Switch work within that environment. So I'll just pause there for any kind of questions that we may have. Okay, I'll go on to the next topic. Is Mike talked about this a little bit, is Chromebooks, not just for students, but for adults as well. So one of the things that we're doing here in the department, recognizing there's just a high percentage of Chromebooks in districts, is we're going to have it as well within KD, the agency. And so there's the Read to Achieve got $15 million a year, and that means in KDEs there's 30 brand new positions that have been hired, not in our office, but the Office of Teaching and Learning this next academic school year, and another 50 on top of that 30 for the next year to help implement Read to Achieve, and it is an ongoing funding source. So that $15 million is there, for forever, or at least until that the budget's cut or removed. So it's not a one-time budget. And so we've taken a look at what's a way to do those coaches, those Read to Achieve coaches. And so our intention is to buy them Chromebooks. Now, I did ask at the erratic meeting with the Eastern Kentucky Technology Coordinators in Meadendale Hollow, how many of them had looked at using Chromebooks, just not for their students. You can see that's a very high percentage already for students, but for the adults as well. Probably a third of those the CIOs that were there when I spoke to them had also implemented it for their teachers. Not necessarily their district office staff yet, but for their teachers. I know in Jefferson County, they have done it, district of that size, they have done it for their adults. I don't know if so much as their district office staff, but definitely down at the classroom level, they've transitioned over to the Chromebooks as well. So one of the questions I'm going to ask, at least I didn't get you the questions there, I know that ahead of time, is I'm going to ask next month, is what percentage of you are looking at implementing Chromebooks for your teacher level? How many have already done it? And how many are looking at it for the teacher level? And then how many are looking at for even the district office level going forward? I'll ask a similar type of questions about, not similar, but questions about the e-games. How many of you have Nintendo sport games? How many of you would be able to meet, in July, talking about that topic before we meet with the eSport coaches? So I just want to let you know that's on our radar screen as well, and we'll see how much that impacts our budgeting for the master plan as we go forward, because we try to include some weights of what we put in place. Are there any other topics that we need to discuss today? Yes, Chuck.
So yeah, David, just some good news to share. Okay, I think everybody understands that the impetus behind CUES, the Connected User Experience, is to get everybody to a point where they've got a single, secure, cloud-based identity that they use to access whatever they need to access, whether it's in the cloud or on-prem. And I think part of that is, especially our K-12 EdTech leaders understand that having an individual having multiple identities is problematic for a variety of reasons. So because of that, we've had an initiative that wrapped up just a couple of months ago where under the leadership of Kristen and Kathy from our Munis team, all right, folks were able to integrate access to Munis, okay, with their common identity they use for other CAT services and secure that identity in the same fashion. So the integration of that single identity into the Munis platform was done just a few months ago. Hats off to everybody out there and working with your finance officers to help them understand the importance of that and all the steps you went through. And once again, hats off to Tyler, our staff internally, for the leadership behind that. The other thing I want to break up, David, is I never let a good crisis go to waste. And there's one comment that was made in Go Soapbox. And it was actually made by one of our staff members, Jody Rose. And it's kind of back to the master plan conversation. And there's as you've already mentioned, and so did Mike, there's a lot of information we're going to be sharing about this moving forward. But it's so important, especially for our new EdTech leaders, all right, that are going to be starting here in just a few weeks, as a matter of fact, to understand that when we create an update to the master plan and we re-baseline what we feel like is the technology need all across the state, couple of points for people to understand about that. Number one, that baseline technology need is not all inclusive of anything and everything that local districts have to spend money on that are quote unquote technology related. Okay. The master plan budget targets a baseline, an expectation of participation in the program equitably for everybody. David, as you mentioned, we use a lot of the data, all of the data that districts turn in every year with our TAR to re-baseline that master plan budget, which helps us establish the state's overall unmet need that annually, okay, we have to present to keep the funding and the money moving for the program. So I'm just bringing up that the data the districts turn in, the TAR reports they turn in, the digital readiness surveys, of which windows are going to open after the first of the year, all help us not only re-baseline the need across the state, but help us every year keep the offers of assistance flowing to districts in support of the overall technology program. So it's this wonderful circle that we go through every year that's just super critical for folks to understand the money. So yeah. I'll close on that note.
Okay. Well, thanks. Is there anything else in Go Soapbox? If not, we may have reached the end of our June webcast, which is fine. We knew it was going to be shorter. Well, thanks
David,
for those that.
David, I had a couple of things. I'm sorry, I couldn't get my mic. Couple things. School report card is going to open up in July. A note will go out to superintendents next week, letting them know to start getting people set up with school report card access. That involves WAPOC, so that's most of you all. So if you need to get some school report card contacts updated, now's the time to do that. We're refreshing our page, but the old information is still current on setting up school report card user access if you've not done it before. Also, I just want to mention that Infinite Campus is switching from a read committed to a read committed snapshot transition isolation level with their Campus 2331, which we'll take in September. What does that mean? It means probably more to you all than it does to me, but that means you can't really lock the tables as you're creating the code to go through and pull data. If you've got code that is available and used locally, you need to be looking at that to make sure that gets updated so it won't break with the September release. So keep that in mind. There is more information out there on Infinite Campus community on that, or reach out to us if you have questions on that. We'll try to get you some additional help on that. That's all. We've got some training July 20th, I think, but everything else can wait.
Okay. Thanks, Dee Dee.
All right.
All right. Everyone else, enjoy the rest of your June. We hope you have a good 4th of July, and we'll see you again in July. Like I say, our focus in July will be the details of the 2025 to 2030 CATS master plan, which is required for us to put in place legislatively and legally. So we are moving aggressively to have that in place and have feel good about where we're at so far. So take care. See you guys in July.